Hello and welcome to the Saturday morning Q&A edition of the CFB Super Show. I am your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85. We're rocking the rec specs like we do. We're heading into week 6 of the college football season. A lot of games on tap. We've been doing the 2-game thing all week long. We are absolutely in mid-season form, and we're going to have football, whether it's NFL or college, I think like over the next, 49 days or something, like there's going to be nonstop football. And we have college football picking right up after this on Tuesday. And of course, we've got NFL on Sunday, Monday. So we have a lot going on. It's exciting time. We're less than 45 days from college football or college basketball as well. So just a great time to be a college sports fan. And if you are, we're going to be hanging out a lot. All right, so this is the Q&A show. As we do pre-lock 1 hour before, we utilize this show as a way to kind of re-solidify any core plays or line in the sand plays that we have. Highlight any thought changes, any news that's come through. What are we going to do with our lineups here? What's changed because of this? And also for you to be able to ask player A, player B, what do you think about this? What about this build? What about this? What about that? What about that? Blah, blah, blah. So that's what we're using this for. Feel free, please make sure to communicate with me via Discord or here in the chat on YouTube or on Twitter. I check all of those. I have lots of questions already this morning. Love it. Working on minimal sleep yet again, but I feel good. I feel really good, and I think this slate is going to be a good one for us. Feel very comfortable the way that we were able to break it down on Thursday, the article that came out, subsequent article, and just talking about it in the Discord. So I think we're going to go into this one feeling pretty well. So let's start off things with the most pertinent news that's come up here, which is the fact that Ohio State's Travion Henderson is going to be out. Now, we talked at length on Thursday, Jake and I, about the various cheap running back options where it's like, hey, man, we got these expensive quarterbacks, these wide receivers that we have to play. Running back, it's an okay spot this week, not the greatest, but we're going to take some shots on some of these cheapies. And as of like 1 hour ago, or maybe even a little less, like 30 minutes ago, I fully planned on running Johnny Richardson in my main. Probably not the most intelligent decision, although I think he is going to perform today. We just know that workload-wise, he has to be super efficient. But I was fully prepared to do so. However, we get the news that Travion Henderson will be out for Ohio State. Now, Trey, he's got some health issues. I really worry about him because he had the opportunity to be like one of the all-time greats at the beginning of his career. But I'm worried that he's going to be one of those guys that just ends up, having a shortened career and doesn't last that long in the NFL because of all these issues. So him being out opens things up tremendously. Now, you have Mayan Williams, who was, pretty productive last year, hasn't really gotten going this year. Had 7 carries in their first game of the season, and he's just dropped down from there to 6 to 5 to 1. There is coach speak, if you believe it, and it's kind of 50-50 sometimes with coach speak, but Coach Day says that they're going to get Mayan the ball. He's the guy there. They got to get him going. He's looked good, and they think he has an opportunity to really, dominate against Maryland. The rah, let's go coach speak. So that's probably going to turn some people his way. Now, he's $6K, which isn't a price that is too high for us to use by any means. But when you look at the others in his range, it becomes really quite questionable, I think. Now, theoretically, on paper, Mayan Williams going to come out and play 70% of the snaps, get 60% of the carries, get some receptions, whatever. Like, okay, yeah, 6K is good, but I don't know that he is, right? Like Chip Traynham is going to get the rock as well, and there's always that Dallin Hayden game looming somewhere as well. You have R.J. Harvey, you have Devin Neal, Will Shipley. You've got the Florida Gators with Trevor Etienne trending doubtful, probably out with Montrell Johnson. You have LaQuint Allen of Syracuse, who's an infinitely better play in my eyes as well. Like all these guys within $200 and $300 of Mayan Williams. I just don't see myself getting there. And I'm okay if he ends up becoming super, super chalky. I'm really okay with it. Where my biggest 2v2, as of this morning with this 2v2, I was, like I said, playing Richardson and then a second LSU receiver. So I was fully intending to go Jaden Daniels, which I am, Malik Neighbors, which I am, and Brian Thomas, which I was. I'd still fine with doing that full stack. I've got Luther Burden like everybody else too. But what happens here is I save that, what is it, $700 from Richardson to chip train him, and that allows me some money to go up and get a little bit more bang for my buck if I want a better running back, or if I don't want to flex out an extra receiver. I have those options. I can go Keon Coleman fully if I want to. And what I'm going to end up doing is it gets me from that second LSU receiver, which again is totally fine. I can eat that salary and play him. Or I can go up and get Jonathan Brooks of Texas, which I love that idea. He's going to get a ton of work, and we know that in the Oklahoma rivalry, there's going to be points scored. So feel very positive about that. Or I could even go to Will Shipley if I wanted to. So it allows me to get a little bit more exposure outside of just the one game that I was just kind of cramming in there. And of course, North Carolina and Syracuse, and I've got all this, 12 game slate, but my rostership and my exposures is really condensed across 2 or 3 games. So I'm looking at Chip Trainum as a main team play, and I'm not really thinking twice about it. Been productive out there, caught a couple of passes. Pulling up I don't have it queued up here, but let me scroll through and check out the snaps. Keep them coming, by the way. I've got a lot of questions coming through on Discord that I'm gonna get to those here in a minute as well. This is a very large list, this snap chart that I have, okay? All right, so looking at it, you have 49% for Trey Day. So that's a lot coming out. Chip Trainum is about 31%. And Mayan Williams right around 23%. Now, Williams played 15 snaps way back in, week 2? And 14 after that. Trainum had played 24, 25, and then he dipped to 10 in one game and then went back up again. So I like Chip. I think it just makes a lot of sense. Even if he ends up being the second fiddle to Mayan Williams, like Jake, my co-host, had joked like this will be the Mayan Williams game that he'll score 120 and 2, and like, oh geez, Jake, what have you done? He could actually have that happen. But Trainum has looked good. I'm happy with the 8 to 10 touch realm for him. I'm ecstatic for anything above that. And I'm still feeling okay with approximately 6 to 8 touches as well. If he gets a reception for like 8 to 9 yards and he gets 6 carries for 45 yards and maybe he finds the end zone once or twice, then we're feeling really great. But at 4-2, we can play Chip Trainum and feel pretty good about it. GPP wise, you can throw Dallin Hayden out there at 3-3 and hope that he gets some time. We saw, he had a stretch there last year when Henderson had to miss time where he was pretty productive for a game or two. So we know he can play and has that talent. And the Maryland matchup on paper, as they say, not the greatest, but come on here. All right, so that is the biggest news. Since I saw you guys last on Thursday, it has been known that JRP of UCF will be stepping back into the starting spot at quarterback, barring a setback during warmups or something. He's going to be good to go. I actually liked Timmy McClain a lot. I was not going to use him in GPPs, I think, but I really liked the receiving group between Kobe Hudson, Javon Baker, and Xavier Townsend. I still do with JRP. It's not as if like, hey, they got their starting guy, he's not going to throw the ball, but they do run a little bit more. I do think that they might prevent him from running as much as he usually likes to because it's a leg injury. but we'll see. The UCF guys they're really cheap on FanDuel, so I still want to get exposure there. And of course, I think Harvey and Richardson both have a chance to play very, very well against Kansas as well. So there's the other bit of injury news there to track. And then towards the end of the slate, actually is the end of the slate for the Florida side, still tracking Trevor Etienne, who is doubtful, very, very unlikely to play. But we've seen that before, guys, be doubtful. They're unlikely to go, and then suddenly, as we get closer to game time, they're warming up with the second team. They're warming up with the first team. They got 30 carries tonight. So tread lightly there. We'll get a definitive answer, hopefully, before we get to the night set, or not night set, but the later games. Montrell Johnson is theoretically the play there against this Vanderbilt defense that is rather forgiving. If ETN can't go, not 100% comfortable with Johnson. I don't think he just suddenly splashes a 200-yard game, but he will probably score. Jake's guy that he brought up, Trayon Webb, he's at least interesting at 4.3. He had that massive game back in, week 2 against McNeese State, where he carried 14 times for 75 yards, a couple of touchdowns, caught a pass. He looks pretty good. He is a GPP value, though, at this point with Chip Trayanum. I know that we presented to you guys like Cedric Alexander from Vanderbilt, Johnny Richardson from UCF, Webb from Florida as these value backs that you can use with Tez Walker to really be able to fit the 2 expensive quarterbacks if you want, or 1 expensive quarterback, a mid-level, like a Garrett Schrader type in the Superflex, and then any wide receiver group that you want. But Chip Trayanum now usurps those guys for me. Trayanum becomes the top value at running back for me personally. I follow that up. I still like Richardson second. Maybe that's just me being, a brand favorite homer type guy. Third would be Cedric Alexander. The last would be Trayon Webb for me in that DK value group at the running back position. All right, let's get into some comments. Spike. Oh, wow. We got some viewers. All right, Aaron, my man Aaron, how you doing, buddy? It's almost time for basketball, brother. Brooks or Neal or Thomas in Maine. If I have Neighbors, I have Daniels, and I have Burton on DK, you, me, and the rest of the industry, brother. Shit, that's tough. I'm looking at trying to play Neal and Brooks together, and obviously Thomas in that region too. If you can only use one of those 3 between Brian Thomas, Devin Neal, and Jonathan Brooks, Devin Neal is my preference. I think Devin Neal has a fantastic matchup, the best of the group, and is going to get back on track. He has let people down the last 2 weeks that they've played, last 2 games, I should say. I think he finds the end zone for the first time in 2 games, and I think that he puts up a rather big score with 100+ rushing yards. So Devin Neal is the guy who I did write up as my number 1 favorite running back in the breakdown, but I put that note about, hey, I'm trying to go cheap here. I don't know if he's going to end up in my lineup. For those keeping track at home, in lieu of the news that we got with Ohio State, Devin Neal is in my main lineup at this point, and he's probably not coming out. How are you running Daniels on FanDuel? Man, I'm making it happen. You got Baron Morton if you really want, but let's see what we can do. So we have some value. We got Rocket Sanders on Arkansas there, sub 7K. Definitely going to be in line to get the majority of the carries there now. And then at the wide receiver spot, you have those UCF boys, and you have Walker. You have Tez Walker, who granted is way, min price 3K there on DraftKings. You pay the 5K on FanDuel, but that's still really, really cheap. So you have that value there with him as well. That's something that you can make work without having to sacrifice all that much. Now, looking at the UCF receivers again, Javon Baker's only 6K, brother. It's only 6K. And then Kobe Hudson there at 6'6". So you can make it happen. There's 3 or 4 guys under 7K that are definitely worth playing. Now, if you absolutely can't get to a lineup that you like with Daniels, the 12-4 is just too much. You'd rather play like Jackson Dart or Dylan Gabriel or a Drake May, who's 2K cheaper. I have no issues with that. I'm just at this point this week with Jaden Daniels, like I was with Caleb Williams last week. Like, yes, they're expensive. They have to put up a really high score, but they're going to do it. they're going to put up 35 at minimum. He's probably going to score 40, maybe even 50 in this game, especially if Missouri and Brady Cook are able to keep up, which I think they might, at least in the first couple of, drives, first quarter to second quarter, whatever. So I just don't want to miss out on those points. And there's value enough to make it happen there with those guys on FanDuel. Chase asked me, what second QB are you targeting? So the group after, let's get this pulled up here. Not that one. So the group of quarterbacks I had mentioned, there's really 4 or 5 guys. I told this to Jake too on the show. You give me 2 of these guys, and I'm feeling pretty happy with the way the slate's going to shape up. Now, obviously, Jaden Daniels is in there as one of those guys, and we're pretty much penciling him in across the board on all sides. That's just where I'm at. Then you have a group of Drake May, Garrett Schrader. For me, Cam Ward. I know he's expensive. People don't like him, I guess, but he's great. And Dylan Gabriel. Those are theoretically on DraftKings the 4 or 5 guys that you have to choose from. I'm not going to get to Cam Ward, just price thing. If I'm going to pay up for a second quarterback, probably going to try to get to Drake May if I can. So that puts Ward out of the picture. Love Dylan Gabriel, but he's usually just an elite level number 1 GPP option for me. So it's not going to make it in there for me, even though I do love Dylan Gabriel, no doubt. So it really becomes Garrett Schrader or Drake May. And, do I want to pay up 9.5 for Drake May? I certainly could, but I will have to sacrifice a Luther Burden or a Malik Neighbors, and I'm not prepared to do that. Or just outright dump Brooks or Devin Neal, I give you my whole lineup here, from there and play and go back to Richardson or 2 value running backs. But as of this moment, Garrett Schrader is really who I'm planning to go back to a week after he dogged me out at low ownership. I think he'll be relatively popular compared to what he was last week. And I do think he gets back on track here because North Carolina defensively is not going to be mistaken for Clemson anytime soon. Clemson had a resurgent game last week. Look for Schrader to get back, scoring rushing touchdowns, whipping the ball around, overall back on track. J-May jumping on late. Not really. Are you saying train him over Richardson? I am. I know it hurts the brand. It really hurts the brand. I want to play Johnny Richardson. And I'm going to be really not super upset because I still have him in lineups. Let's not get crazy here. But I'm going to be super sad if he does score twice or goes for 100 yards and he's not in my main. He's going to be 5% owned, if that. But as of this moment, I am taking Trip Trainum and that, few $100 discount. Brett asked some of your FanDuel cheapies. I mentioned Rocket Sanders there just a second ago. The UCF guys, obviously Tez Walker, who's sitting there at 5K. There are a lot of good prices on FanDuel. It's not as soft as it was last week, but it's still relatively soft, no doubt. If you want to chase Omari and Miller from Colorado there at 6.5, I still really like the tight end, Michael Harrison. Shedeur Sanders is really zeroing in on him. He's there at 6.5. If you're desperate and need another cheapie, you can play Tavarish Dawson at 5.2. Not the greatest play in the world, but there'll be a level of volume there. Jalen Conyers, the number 1 tight end on Arizona State in that same game, he's 5.9. That's a really good price on FanDuel. So between those guys like a Conyers, the UCF receivers, Rocket Sanders, Raheem Sanders, in case you don't know who I'm referring to there, and those are kind of the primary cheapies that I am looking at there across the board on FanDuel. There are a ton of 8K to 9K guys as well, but of course we can't just simply stuff them all in, right? But I think you take one of those UCF receivers and Rocket and you kind of go from there and see what happens. You also have a really, really cheap Donovan Edwards of Michigan against Minnesota, priced there at 5.3. They're really trying to bait us into that one. Eventually he's going to have a game where he's going to find pay dirt and he's going to, get 100 yards or he's going to catch 5 passes for 100 yards, something like that. Don't know that I trust him there, but at 5.3 on FanDuel, that's pretty cheap for a player like Donovan Edwards that we know is capable of completely mutilating a slate in the right situation. Raining a ton here in Maryland. My guess is Ohio State is all ground game. Totally fine with that. I have an uncomfortably low amount, not not an uncomfortable amount of, but an uncomfortable amount not having the Egbuka Harrison group there on Ohio State. Like, and when I say very little, I mean actually almost none. And it's not because I don't like them. It's just because where the hell am I going to get the salary for them? I can't play them over the LSU guys. Can't play them over Burden. So I'm okay with that. Favorite running back, excuse me, on FanDuel for 9K or less. FanDuel is making, don't call it a comeback, Jamie. Don't call it a comeback, but FanDuel is making their return. They're offering contests, which number one is kind of half the battle. And they're getting people hooked back on their product again. So we'll be interested to see what they do for college basketball, because they didn't really offer anything last year for that. Okay, 9K or less. Quinshon Judkins, who I indicated was my favorite running back on FanDuel, price not factoring in just overall like top play. I'm going with Judkins. Up against that Arkansas team that's just bleeding fantasy points to multiple positions. I think he's going to have a big game against them. So he is the number one play there, under or at 9K. LaQuint Allen of Syracuse, of course. A lot of people in the industry are all over him for good reason. And then I would probably say the 8K price on Ray Davis. It's another kind of tough matchup going against Georgia. But last week, Florida was theoretically on paper a tough matchup, and he completely undressed them. So you could get there as well, but definitely one of Quinshon Judkins or LaQuint Allen would be the answer there. Would you play Brooks or Neal, Brett? Yeah, you're looking at a lineup similar to me. I would play Devin Neal over Brooks. I, at this moment, am falling into both, which is a really fantastic problem to have. Normally, I don't have that problem. Normally, I have the opposite of that, where I have to choose one for sure. But Devin Neal gets back on track with 2 touchdowns and 125 yards today. So you want him in your lineup. Burden or Brooks in the flex. I think you got to play Luther Burden today. In case you are not a member of FTN and you didn't see me just kind of, gushing about Luther Burden in the article. He looks fantastic. He is going to be playing on Sundays. He's just a maniac. You look at what others have done against LSU, and it looks like just the premier spot to use a guy. LSU just got, rocked in their secondary by Trey Harris, who has been fantastic this year, 153 yards, 8 catches. Jordan Watkins, 5 catches, 103 yards. Even Dayton Wade had 764 and a touchdown. So their secondary got obliterated. And that wasn't just a 1-week blip. You go back a couple weeks to Arkansas, you see Luke Haas, their tight end, 6 catches, 116 yards with 2 touchdowns. Andrew Armstrong, their WR1, 6 catches, 80 yards. Then, they had Mississippi State, which they did shut down. Then they had Grambling State, which they did shut down. But then you go back to the first game of the season, FSU dropped 45 on them. Jordan Travis went completely ballistic with 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. But who absolutely rocked them? But a versatile receiver by the name of Keon Coleman that you can put anywhere on the field, makes tough grabs, is just an automatic weapon that just, if you throw the ball anywhere in his vicinity, he's going to pull it down. 9 catches, 122 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think we could see that type of game from Luther Burden today. So long-winded answer, I know, but Luther Burden does need to be in your lineup there, Milton. Last question, which 2 quarterbacks do you like on FanDuel besides Daniels? My man, Day. So I would say Drake May, because I think he just scores a buttload of touchdowns today, and I think he gets some rushing scores. So if not Jaden Daniels, I go to Drake May. And then I also really keep finding myself back in the Baron Morton sitting there at 8K or KJ Jefferson sitting there at 8.6 range. Both of those seem very, very cheap to me. I know Arkansas's had their struggles, but I do think they put up a bunch of points. And I think KJ Jefferson could potentially be a GPP winner on FanDuel. So kind of sneaks in there in the 3rd spot for me behind Daniels and May. But if you're running the non-Daniels lineup, then I think you go KJ You can even do like KJ and Baron Wharton together and really start to get nasty with your lineup. But if you're fading Daniels, I think you play Drake May. Jackson Dart could definitely match as well, but you just take that discount and see what you can do with it. Crawdad Corey asked, are we playing Tez Walker? Yes, you're playing Tez Walker. We're playing Tez Walker in just about every single lineup imaginable on DraftKings. Said it when it happened, when he became eligible. It's unfortunate that it happened so early in the week, but not early enough to where they had time to pull the slate and redrop it. And it was already well past that time. So we have a min price Tez Walker where everybody is going to roster him. That's just way too good of salary savings for a guy that even if he gets 2 catches for 20 yards, you're moving right along. We got a min price guy. Any points he gives us at all is a major bonus. He's probably going to get peppered with targets right away, I would suspect, considering the fact that he's been practicing with the team this entire time on the scout team, and likely has a already established rapport with Drake May. The North Carolina receiving room is full of talent. Kobe Paysour, Nate McCollum, enough to keep defenses from completely keying in on Tez. So any one-on-one situations, he's just going to win those, and he's going to put up a very respectable score. And even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter because of how highly owned he is going to be. So yes, Tez Walker, we are playing. Let's go over to Discord. Getting a lot of Brooks or Neal questions, like both, but I'm leaning Neal. Ward at QB, flex, Kelly, or Montrell Johnson? Cam Ward. So I'm guessing you don't have any Kyle Williams. And you're talking about FanDuel. I would say Kelly with Ward, because if you're gonna go for it with Cam Ward in that spot and know that he's probably going to be very low owned, if he does pop off, 2 of his receivers are also going to pop off, and those are likely going to be Kelly and Kyle Williams. So I would take Kelly in that spot there, especially if you're playing Cam Ward, because I want him to have one of his weapons. All right. Alex posted in the Discord, Tez Walker. Let's see. What do we got here? Tez Walker not going to start. Expected to play, but not going to. What? I really, really was hoping that they would say something like, "Hey, he's back, but we're gonna bring him back next week. We're gonna wait." But there's just no reason to wait. So, but good information. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. Chip Tranium over Jan. Oh, I already got that one. Just think Chip's the move. Getting a couple of questions about Mayan Williams. I don't particularly love him, especially not so much at 6K on DraftKings, but theoretically that play could work. Williams or Shipley. I would go Shipley over Mayan Williams. That is my personal preference. Sup, bro? I don't know what that is. Okay. There was one other. Any viable running backs for big GPP on DraftKings at 4,100 or less? Cedric Alexander kind of falls right into your lap. Jordan Travis being overlooked. I think you are right, Jamie. I don't know how much I'll actually have, but he's definitely being overlooked by the masses. A nice little Travis, Wilson, Keon Coleman triple trio stack there in large field GPPs could definitely be a winner. I feel like that is a very high upside maneuver. You guys got a lot of good stuff today. Appreciate all that interaction that we got going on here. All right, let's look at ownership, and then we'll get ready to mosey on out of here. Oh, this is a good one. Brooks or Thomas in Maine if I have Neighbors, Daniels, and Burden. If you're going full bore stack, Thomas, but if you're looking at that, I have a really strong suspicion that we have the same lineup. So Brooks for me over Thomas, but only because I want a little more exposure to a different game that I think has a potential to shoot out. Schrader or Cook in GPP. If you're going to go with a not, you're, probably playing Burden, but if you're going with somebody beyond Luther Burden from Missouri, you're going to play Brady Cook. He's a game manager for sure, but he's not like the boring, it's a boring kind of game manager, which I know there's, what other kind of game manager is there, but he's a little bit more for DK. Okay, hold on, Craig. He's a little bit more of a high octane game manager because he knows where to put the ball for Burden. He's been extremely accurate. He has not thrown a single interception this year, 11 touchdowns. He could very easily throw 350 yards and 3 touchdowns today. So he's definitely the guy over Schrader for me. LSU's run defense has been better as well. Craig actually clarified, not on FanDuel. I am talking about DraftKings, Cam Ward lineups. I still want Kelly or Kyle Williams. If you're playing Cam Ward, I think you got to just prioritize a weapon for him because if he goes off, I know he's been adding some stuff with his legs and his mobility, but if he goes off today, it's going to be because he was, playing the huck it chuck it football. And he's going to have thrown for somewhere in the region of 350, 360 yards, 3 touchdowns. There's been some chatter about, hey, Lincoln Victor's out, his number 1 receiver. That's a big downgrade for him. What's he going to do? And a lot is being made about that. Lincoln Victor has been fantastic, but let's not get too crazy because after he went down early in that game, let's not forget, Kyle Williams went for 174 yards. Let's not forget, went down early in that game. Josh Kelly went for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns for good measure. They'll be fine. This game, the Cougars, I wish I could have gotten ownership or exposure to this game in my main. The Cougars versus Bruin game is being so vastly overlooked. I just ended up taking the over because I feel like shit. I gotta get some money on this game somewhere. I really like Dante Moore. I know Jake was trying to bully me out of recommending him as a GPP play even, but my goodness, the kid's going to break out at some point. He's going to have that passing volume. He's going to get into a shootout with Cam Ward, show people how good he can be, and pay off that $6K price point. So I really like this game, but yeah, if I'm playing Cam Ward, I'm just taking what I would have done is this, like say you're playing Jaden Daniels with Cam Ward. And if you're planning to play Burden, cool, lock. And then the 2 LSU receivers, which was a real possibility like that heading into this morning, that was the move for me. I wasn't even going to play with it. But of course, news happens and it necessitates having to make some changes. I would take out one of the LSU receivers and put in a Kyle Williams or Josh Kelly. Josh Kelly's probably the one I would prefer, but he's also 600 more there on DK, and Kyle Williams will be involved. I just think Kelly's a little bit more of an explosive play, although Kyle Williams has game-breaking ability as well, just like the way that Kelly plays a little bit more. And I think he'll be the most like Lincoln Victor without Lincoln Victor around. But yeah, that game's going to be fun. No doubt. No diggity, no doubt. Clarification, Tez Walker, they say he will play and it'll be a feel thing. I don't even care. I just don't care. I actually see how old you guys are that hang out with me. I actually put in the article, I'm going Ron Popeil and I'm going to set it and forget it. And if you don't know what that means, go ahead and do yourself a favor and look that up after the show because that is the infomercial king, not alive anymore, but that was the one. Me and my grandpa and that come on, we'd be doing the skit. All right, do you have a $3,600 flex? Man, It's dire. It's dire straits down there, eh? Let's see. That's dire straits. 3,600. I think you're putting me to the test. Number one. Dallin Hayden, nah. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, assuming you have Tez, you're trying to trick me here. There is a play. Didn't talk about this kid at all on the show because we're trying really hard to not have the show be 8 hours long on Thursdays. But for Florida, they had, we're talking about the running backs and all that, but there is some interesting pieces here for the wide receivers. You have Caleb Douglas, who is out with the injury, the leg issues. You have a banged up Eugene Wilson who might play on a limited basis. I'm seeing conflicting reports, and you've got the defense blanketing Ricky Pearsall overall. There is this kid here by the name of Andy Jean sitting there at 3-4, 4 catches, 33 yards against Kentucky. He did have a 32-yard reception the week before that, and they even gave him a carry in that Charlotte game in which he blew past that defense for a 25-yard gain. So a big play guy sitting there at 3-4. Will the targets be there? Maybe not, but you're looking for a bottom of the barrel price, but a not bottom of the barrel talent. I think Andy Jean is somebody that you could look at. Far from a, hey, lock him into your main. I'm not saying that by any means, but the last 2 games, he's been extraordinarily involved. 5 targets against Kentucky, injuries, banged up guys, defensive attention elsewhere. The makings of a kind of a sneaky game. But keep in mind, I have whiffed my last 2 weeks of sneaky plays a la Colston Loveland, who did us no favors last week, no fault of his own. And I'm not attaching myself to Andy Jean in that same way. But there you go, Andy Jean. Nothing could. I knew I could count on you, Jamie. Brett says Thomas or Neighbors. That is the question, isn't it? Malik Neighbors. They're both great, though. They're both great. I'm just going with the Neighbors play. Thomas has that touchdown equity, but that scares me because that could easily, that it's tough to maintain that level of production when it comes to scoring touchdowns. But the yardage, the targets, the receptions, like that's here to stay. I really have the vibes of 2019 LSU with these guys, and I just think they're both going to explode today, which is why I want to play both. But if you can only play one, like myself, in your main build, stick with Malik Neighbors there if you have the salary. I feel like there's less chance of a bust happening. I don't think either of them will bust, but I feel like it's less of a chance there with our neighbor. Won't you be? Hey, Alex, in the house. Thanks for all the news you've been posting, my friend. I went and hit that. It was 70. I thought it was 70.5 for some reason, but it was 79.5 for Sheen Ali's rushing stats prop against your North Carolina State Wolfpack. But I'm still on it. Which reminds me, we'll get into that in a second too, and then we'll finish up. Did I miss favorite FanDuel plays? Just tuned in. Yeah, Quinshon Judkins, Jaden Daniels, and anyone that is catching passes in the LSU Missouri game. You won't be able to play them all there because they're expensive, but Luther Burden's great. Obviously, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. You do have cheap options there. Just to repeat this, Jalen Conyers of ASU, sub 6K. The 3 primary receivers for UCF, all under 7K. And you have a Rocket Sanders, who is going to be getting probably like 70% of the carries today and beyond, infinity, at sub 7K. So there is your FanDuel report. All right, let's look at projected rostership, or what we think it might be. At the quarterback spot, obvious at this point, it was Caleb Williams last week. It's Jaden Daniels this week. And then I think it's going to be like probably Garrett Schrader, it irritates me because he didn't do well last week when I was on him. No one else on him. We're all going to be on him this week, and he's probably just going to crush his chalk. So that's just irritating. I think Brady Cook has a chance to end up being relatively highly owned just because people stacking that up. And then I think you see Drake May, who, even though he's expensive, I think we see some ownership creep up there on Drake May. And then you have a bunch of cheapies. You've got, Jason Bean, Kieran Jones, JRP's under 8K. So there's a myriad of options, but I think they're all going to be pretty closely owned. So I think Daniels, Schrader, and Cook are your top 3 highest owned. Running backs, it's a little harder. I think people will see that ETN out most of the time when it comes to a starter or a regular player being out than the guy that either plays behind him or is at the same position as him gets that big bump. So I think everybody flocks to Montrell Johnson. I don't love that play. He will probably do very well, but that's one I'm just prepared to get away from, or at least try to, and hope that he, stays under 20 fantasy points. If he puts up a 35 or something, then it may be a cry in the corner type day, but or a cry in the core type day. You're gonna cry in the car, ain't you? You don't want to do that. Other running backs, Will Shipley. I don't even have to think twice about that. Not for playing him, just that I know he's going to be highly owned. Anytime Shipley's under 7K, I think people just at this point are plugging him in because, he gets that volume, he catches passes, he's just around. LaQuint Allen, and probably chip train him now. He's so cheap. I don't know. People are gonna see that one, and then I think rounding out the top 5, 6 highest owned is Jonathan Brooks after what he's been doing for Texas. Wide receivers, Luther Burden, number 1 highest owned. Then you got Malik Neighbors. Then you got Brian Thomas. Then you got Tez Walker. All of those guys massively owned. You'll see a lot of ownership on those guys. And then I think the next tier down is like Washington State Cougars receivers, Oklahoma guys. Maybe a little Theo Weiss in there. Can't forget about Donovan Brown, who I've seen have some ownership over the last slate or two. But mainly, LSU, Missouri receivers with Tez Walker. That is your chuckity chalk. He's going to get there. Yes, he is. Let's talk props. This is a good segue into props, which I'm going to have to get down to the sports book. I'm missing out here on a few things that I want to get in. So let's just double check what they've made that, because they might have changed it. They just give him so much volume. Like, all he gets, he plays 85% of the snaps or some crazy thing. I mean, he just 79.5 still. Minus 115. Rasheen Ali, 79.5 rushing yards versus North Carolina State. I just feel like it's going to be hard for him not to get that number. You know what I mean? It's just way too light for him. He's going to get 30 damn carries. He's going to get an opportunity to just, put up these massive stats. Let me pull up. I have a prop betting article that I do each week that you can find over on the FTN bet side. And Ali was a featured play for me. You look at the Wolfpack's defense, it's solid, no doubt. And they held Jawar Jordan to 35 yards, something like that. But you look a little deeper, you'll see Notre Dame, Audric Osteme, he ran all over them, 134 yards, only had 14 carries. The Notre Dame offensive line, of course, is super elite. So they that's kind of to be expected. But it's not like we're dealing with a situation here where the Wolfpack are the steel curtain, right? Like, I'm not trying to dog on your guys, but there's just no way I don't see a huge game from Ali, statistically speaking, over 79.5 yards. He has gotten no fewer than 18 carries in any game this year. You look at the course of his career, he's eclipsed the 79-yard rushing mark in 15 of 22 career games. Just a volume play. volume play. The other two I'm really high on, and they were featured in my prop betting article. Brian Thomas over 82.5 receiving yards. I just think he gets 100 plus with ease. And then Malik Neighbors over 99.5 receiving yards. Both are minus 115 over on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Both are hitting for 100. I think Neighbors is probably going to get 150 and 2, like with ease. So those are the couple of prop bets that I'm on. We'll end the show and get out of here unless you guys have a few left. He'll get stuffed 5 times, then break off a 50-yarder and then repeat. You're right, he does. He'll start the first quarter. He'll have 9 carries in the first quarter for 7 yards. He'll be like, whoa, what? Because nobody pays attention to that. They just look at the end and see he rushed for 150 yards again. But if you happen to look at a Marshall game in the first quarter, you'll be like, what the hell is going on with Rasheen Ali? Why is he getting, 0.5 YPC? What? And then you'll check in the third quarter and it's like, that's the Rasheen Ali I know. He just rushed for 70 yards that quarter. So you're probably right. All right. Let me just double check here. Schrader. I actually said that on the show. I'll get you on after that. Guess you're not listening, Woolsey. So I'm going to take a page out of Jake's book here and give you a player and a stat line that we're going to roll with. And I really wanted it to be Johnny Richardson. I really did. But instead, I'll go Devin Neal, which maybe not that exciting. But, I wonder if the ownership on him is going to get a little bit on the lower side than it should be. But I have Devin Neal hitting approximately 125 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving, and he happens to have a 75-yard receiving day with the upside for more. Devin Neal, anytime touchdown prop, we're back on it and we're ready to walk it to the window. Thanks a lot, everybody, for hanging out with me this morning. We have 10 minutes until the main slate locks. You can expect a night slate article for the DraftKings slate later today to come out this afternoon. And of course, the late night slate, which is a small one, only 2 games tonight, will be Discord only content there. Thanks, guys. Best of luck this week. Let's have a big one. I want to see all of the green screens in the Discord later on tonight. See y'all later.